Oh, fuck. They put overdue rent on my pizza.
Pizza time. No matter what I do,
Do you love me or not?
no matter how hard I try,
I want Spider-Man dead.
it's the ones I love who will always be the ones who pay.
I can't keep thinking about you. I'm getting married.
I want a life of my own. I'm Spider-Man. No more.
Spider-Man 2 is once again directed by the incredible Sam Raimi. If you didn't check out my Spider-Man 1 review last week, I highly recommend checking that one out before this, as you'll get a better grasp of my perspective going into these movies at this point in my life. But just to get it out of the way, I am a massive fan of this trilogy. I do have a bit of nostalgia bias here, but I genuinely think that these are some of the greatest examples of movies in the superhero genre. Raimi's whimsical, campy style to me perfectly captures that comic book charm, even if he does deviate from the source material in certain major ways. His earnest willingness to be unafraid of a comic booky world is just so inherently charming and entertaining. And I think what I love about Spider-Man 2 specifically is it's a great showcase of just because you have this cartoonish world with exaggerated heightened emotions and stakes doesn't mean you can't do real, heavy, interpersonal character drama. You can call Spider-Man 2 many things. Yes, it's a superhero action-adventure fantasy film with hints of science fiction thrown here and there, but I'd say, weirdly enough, especially this film is a drama. This film picks up roughly a year and a half after Spider-Man 1, and in the first half of the film we really see how Peter is growing to struggle with this choice to become Spider-Man. We see the sacrifices he has to make in both his personal and professional life. Just to get the funny, memey stuff out of the way, Mr. Aziz, his boss at Joe's Pizza, is such a funny, memorable character for what little amount of screen time he may have, but that iconic presence has just spawned so many memes, and that minute subplot at the very beginning of the movie alone has spawned the infamous, iconic
Pizza time.
My favorite new side character addition probably has to be Peter's landlord, Mr. Dickovich. I think of all the supporting characters in the Spider-Man movies, he's probably the one I end up referencing the most in my daily life. It is free country. It is not rent-free country. If promises were crackers, my daughter would be fat. I have the ears of a cat and the eyes of a rodent. My friends fucking hate me. Something funny I noticed this time watching Spider-Man 2 to prepare for this video that I hadn't noticed before is in the morning when Peter has to use the bathroom, Dickovich cuts in front of him, asking for rent once again, as he typically does. Then later in the day, Dickovich is still in there like, homie's been shitting all fucking day. Probably not the case, I just like that in my headcanon now, Dickovich is just taking a wicked shit the entire fucking day. Honestly relatable. As I was saying before, Peter's really down on his luck and struggling at this point in his life. It seems like everything in the world, even his friends, are starting to go against him. I really like how Spider-Man 2 evolves everything set up from Spider-Man 1 in a satisfying way where you definitely feel like there is a strong evolution of all the characters and events throughout the course of this movie. I mentioned I liked James Franco's performance in the first Spider-Man movie in that review. In this movie, I think his performance is kind of hit or miss at points, but narratively speaking, I really like that we start to see Harry fall into this truly darker place. It feels natural, it feels believable as a de-evolution from where he was at in Spider-Man 1. You can tell he still has a lot of the same psychological daddy issues and how he feels this sense of responsibility to avenge his father and hold this grudge against Spider-Man. It's kind of an interesting parallel for the responsibility that Peter feels for the death of his Uncle Ben. They're almost two sides of the same coin in that respect. I think in general this movie has a much better script than Spider-Man 1 and everything feels plotted out much more sensibly. Like the fact that right off the bat we connect Harry Osborn to Otto Octavius, kind of setting things in place for them to work together at a later point in the film. But while we're on that subject, yeah, obviously reviewing Spider-Man 2, have to talk about Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, yeah, another fucking iconic casting choice that everyone has raved about for like over 20 fucking years. And it's well warranted because what I love about this performance is that in his earlier scenes where he's being introduced, it is a more subdued performance. You just think he's a really cool dude and you like spending time with him. Even though he only has a couple scenes of setup really, you quickly grow to love him and just seeing the way he interacts with Peter is really charming and just makes him a fully believable person first and foremost. I also appreciate how the chemistry he shares with Peter Parker kind of allows the more intelligent aspects of Peter's character to shine, which is something we didn't see much of in Spider-Man 1. So even though it's not in this movie much, I'm glad that it's here, because I know that that's an aspect of Tobey's Peter that people like to complain about, is that his extreme intellect isn't delved upon enough in these movies. But once Octavius does end up making that dark turn, which admittedly is maybe a little less believable than Norman Osborn's turn to Green Goblin in the first movie, where, you know, he just really kind of lost his fucking mind after that experiment. And I guess it is similar here, though we do have this slightly convoluted explanation that his octopus arms are actually AIs, and once the inhibitor chip is broken, it's as if these like evil robot arm AIs are sort of invading his consciousness and influencing his decisions. It might be a little bit of a stretch, but I'm willing to make it work because I think as a villain overall, Doc Ock is fucking awesome in this movie. He's a very different type of villain than Norman Osborn, even if their setups are both science experiments gone wrong and then they turn bad. But whereas Willem Dafoe is just an unhinged maniac, and that's awesome, Doc Ock is more methodical. He is evil and quippy, but the way his performance, for as over the top as it might be, is different from Willem Dafoe's, as Willem Dafoe was really playing up the insanity in Spider-Man 1, but here Alfred Molina really chooses to channel this Shakespearean gravitas. It feels like thespian theater acting whenever he's monologuing as Doc Ock in this movie. And that is such a perfect fit for the world that has been set up by Sam Raimi in these Spider-Man movies and this total exaggerated comic booky universe. So I feel like Alfred Molina choosing to channel that was such a smart, fitting choice. I feel like he perfectly knew what type of movie and what type of universe this was. Forgot to mention this during my initial recording, but yeah, also the way Doc Ock's motivation and storyline ties in and parallels with Peter's, I think, is really smartly done. The fact that throughout the movie, Peter, through his arc, is able to learn the lesson that Octavius still clearly needs to learn. So he's kind of able to echo those words Aunt May said to him, to Octavius at the end of the movie. It's just another example of like why this script is so much stronger, in my opinion. Everything just kind of naturally clicks together because Harry and Octavius had that initial setup where Harry was funding Octavius's science thing. So Doc Ock comes in at the end of Act 2 and is able to be the connecting force that brings Peter and Harry back together so their arc can not quite be resolved, but be further touched upon, as well as to set up the third act. It's all just very natural and leads into everything. And yeah, the effects with his arms and all the action scenes involving Spidey and Doc Ock hold up surprisingly well. There's a couple moments that are clearly CGI, and I mean, yeah, I guess like the majority of it is clearly CGI, obviously, but all smartly done CGI. Like I was shocked watching this movie thinking that it looked better and more convincing than most of the effects that I see nowadays in modern blockbuster films. I think a large part of that is that cartoonish tone that Raimi has set up. So obviously one of the main central aspects of all three of these Spider-Man movies is the romantic storyline between Peter and MJ. And once again, I'll reiterate, yeah, people have really kind of criticized this interpretation of MJ a lot. I feel like especially in Spider-Man 2, the way things left off at the end of Spider-Man 1 left it kind of ambiguous whether or not she actually knows Peter is Spider-Man. We see that she recognizes that kiss at the end of Spider-Man 1, so part of me feels like she knows, which makes some of her decisions in this movie a little frustrating. I do understand her frustration and how any interaction she has with Peter, yeah, it's obvious this dude is fucking head over heels for her, yet for some reason is continuously turning her down and not able to make it to like her show on time and whatnot. So yeah, on one level she is valid for being upset, but if she does know he's Spider-Man, then you must have some idea of why he's choosing to not get with you as a means of trying to help protect you. But perhaps her frustration with Peter and kind of treating him sort of mean at points in this movie are more connected with the fact that he's being dishonest and lying about not being Spider-Man. I do think, similar to how certain aspects of Harry and Peter's stories are intertwined and paralleled, there's a bit of that here with Peter and MJ, as they are both at a point in their lives where they don't know exactly what they want. They're feeling a lot of frustration off of that. And yeah, these characters just graduated from high school in the last movie, so they're like in their early 20s here. I'm willing to forgive some of the asshole-ish, bitchy type behavior MJ shows towards Peter in this movie, because yeah, they're still young and they're navigating their lives. But yeah, some of her motivation and decisions are kind of questionable at times, you gotta be honest there. To go back to slightly sillier territory, I love that J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson gets a lot more screen time in this movie. In a world where I feel like modern blockbuster blockbuster cinema just has so much awful forced humor throughout that just isn't funny whatsoever. I think J.K. Simmons brings a perfect comedic sensibility to this series that no matter how dramatic a lot of the soap opera shit or emotional character stuff might be, J. Jonah Jameson and all the Daily Bugle people like serve perfectly as comic relief. And his scenes are always hilarious, absolutely.
But could you pay me in advance?
You serious?
Though I do guess one of my criticisms with this movie is loosely connected to his character, in that the man MJ is going to marry throughout this movie just so happens to be J. Jonah Jameson's son, the astronaut.
My son, the astronaut.
And that's literally all we ever hear about his character. I seem to remember hearing that was taken from the comics that J. Jonah Jameson does have a son who is an astronaut. But it's just such a weirdly specific detail to not have any narrative importance whatsoever, especially considering his tie to MJ. He's really not a character at all in this movie. I wish we saw a little bit more of him because of this vastly important role he plays. Even when Doc Ock kidnaps MJ in the third act of the movie, we never cut back to John Jameson to see him panicking and like frantically searching for his fiance. I don't know, it's just such a weird random character, I think. So something I unfortunately neglected to mention in my review for Spider-Man 1 was also the casting of Rosemary Harris as Aunt May and Cliff Robertson as Uncle Ben. It's just when talking about movies this great that already have so many perfect casting choices, a few things are gonna fly by me as I'm gushing about it. Well, obviously Uncle Ben doesn't have a full returning role since he fucking died. The callback in Spider-Man 2 to the with great power comes great responsibility scene, where it's sort of like Peter is asking for permission to not be Spider-Man and to do what makes him happy, has always been a sequence that's brought a tear to my eye. I think that scene was beautiful in Spider-Man 1, and just seeing the way the actors perform it here, it feels like it could be such a cheap cliche callback, but it feels so earned and so emotionally rich here. Speaking of the more emotional aspects of this movie, Rosemary Harris as Aunt May, she gives a great performance here in my opinion, even if she is only in a handful of scenes. The moment when Peter confesses to her his allowing of the person who killed Uncle Ben to get away, hence him being accidentally responsible for Uncle Ben's death to a certain extent, is really heartbreaking and kind of devastating. Raimi once again chooses to remove the score in this scene and just have these really raw performances by these actors, but you really just get the sense that this character is motivated by guilt. Guilt that can't allow him to just live a normal life only as Peter Parker. And I think this scene was sort of one of the moments where he broke down and began to realize, like, yeah, I need to be Spider-Man. The nail in that coffin being possibly my favorite scene in a superhero movie, where Aunt May is moving and then Peter comes to visit her, and she gives that iconic speech about how she believes
there's a hero in all of us that keeps us honest, gives us strength, makes us noble, and finally allows us to die with pride. Even though sometimes we have to be steady and give up the thing we want the most. Even our dreams.
The words she says regarding sometimes we have to give up even our dreams in order to do the right thing in life is something that I've repeated to myself whenever I'm struggling on a bad day at points. It's a lesson I've carried with me and will carry to my grave because of this movie and because of this beautiful scene. Which, yeah, makes me sob every time I watch this movie. It's the perfect cornerstone of Peter's arc, and whereas I mentioned earlier, yeah, these characters are young, they're in their early 20s, I feel like that sense of depressive aimlessness is something all of us could relate to at that age. Whereas, yeah, in Spider-Man 1, he made that choice to make the sacrifice to become Spider-Man. This is where he learned and understood the weight of sacrifice and what that meant for him in his life. Ergo, this whole arc just feels so complete and so essential to his character. Spider-Man 2 is the true Empire Strikes Back of the series, as people like to say. Only I'll go a step further and say, I actually like Spider-Man 2 more than The Empire Strikes Back. Sure, it's not perfect, but nothing really is. This movie is perfect in my heart. I love everything about it. I think it's one of the finest examples of genre filmmaking, and weirdly enough, one of the most accurate portrayals of early 20s depression I've seen on film, all within the context of this beautiful, zany comic book world. This captures everything I love about the superhero genre to the best possible degree, which is why, honestly, I'm gonna give Spider-Man 2 a 10 out of 10. Not just one of my favorite comic book movies, but this is one of my favorite movies of all time. It has meant a lot to me over the course of my life, and it will continue to mean a lot to me for the remainder of my life. So on that note, thanks for watching, guys. Hope you have a good one.